All right, I guess I should make the disclaimer. Recording is in progress. Anyone, if you don't want to be on, if you don't want to be recorded, turn off your video, please. And I am going to share screen. And that's the beginning of that, and I will. Actually, I'll start with spotlighting Jill Fioravanti, everyone. I'll just kick this off. So this adult group is the formal part of this is going to be pretty short. We're just gonna have a little meet the board, and we're gonna go over some of the priorities. I will try not to steal Jill's thunder and go over some of the priorities we're currently thinking about for the upcoming year, and then we're just going to open it up to questions, answers, thoughts, whatever from anybody, and we on the board will do our best to answer. And with that, I will hand it over to Jill Fioravanti.
Hi, good morning, everyone. I'm Jill. I'm the vice chair of the board, and I wish everyone cheered for me like that for every Zoom meeting I'm on. And the whole board's really excited to be able to spend some time with IFFP community today to talk a little bit about the board and staff priorities. And I would just note, these are really a work in progress. And we're looking forward to getting everyone's thoughts and perspective on them today. And the board and staff are going to be doing more work on them in the coming few weeks, in particular, as we kind of set a plan for this 2021-22 year. But before we do that, I can go to the next slide. We wanted to have you meet the board. And I think most of these folks are on the line today. So maybe, assuming you are, I don't know how to get off of Spotlight for myself, but
I'm going to try to spotlight everybody who's here.
I'm super impressed, John. So as John works to spotlight all the board members that are here, which I think are the majority, maybe we can just quickly introduce ourselves. And I will start, as John's doing that, why don't we start with David, and then I'll call out board members as I see them pop up. So David, maybe just say a little bit of name,
Yep.
you know, who's in your family, how long you've been with IFFP, and one thing you really love about being on the IFFP board.
Okay. So repeating myself from a few minutes ago, I'm David Schottlander. I am the IFFP treasurer. My family's been members for 4 years. My wife teaches third grade in the IFFP Sunday school, and I have daughters in Sarah is in 6th grade, Tracy's in 3rd grade. My favorite thing about being on the IFFP board is really being able to both help define and support the mission, looking at, you know, what we've done over a 25-year history, and then, you know, trying to formulate what do we look like going forward and how do we get there. And it's a real joy getting to participate in that process.
All right, Will, why don't we go to you next, and then Heidi, and then Susan.
All right, thanks, Jill. I'm Will Walker. This is my 2nd year on the board. My wife Leah and I have been members since 2013, and I have 2 boys, Isaac and Noah, and they would be in the 4th and I guess 1st grade Sunday school classes. But I would say probably the thing 2 things I would say I enjoy most about the board. One is the camaraderie of the board members, and the fact that, you know, it's that part of it, that's a non-issue, and it's great to work with people that are driven by the same mission, which ultimately is to, you know, just try to continue to keep IFFP going for another 25 years and continuously make improvements along the way. So so in that sense, I guess I'd say I would echo David's thoughts there as well. So Thanks, Jill.
Thank you, Will. Okay, Heidi and then Susan.
So can I just say what Will just said everything I wanted to say, except that I don't have two boys and my wife isn't Leah. So I'm Heidi, my husband is John, our son is Josh. He's 13, he's in the COA. If you were in the gathering, you saw us cutting our ribbons and dancing and all that business. And we've been members since 2015. And I've been on the board. This is my 4th year on the board, unusual, but doing it for consistency reasons. My favorite thing now that I have been on the board for 3 years about being on the board is I love to make my world smaller. And by that, I mean, I really wish I could know everybody in the entire world. And since I can't do that, this is part of making my world. I get to know these and really know these people and be in the trenches. And it sounds corny, but I love it.
We love you, Heidi. The love comes back to you. All right, Susan and then John. And I don't know if Natalie or Jared are on, but if so, they could definitely introduce themselves too.
I'm Susan Kaplan, and this is my 2nd year on the board. This year on the board secretary. My family joined IFFP in the late 1990s. My daughter is about to turn 26. I echo everything everybody else has said about my favorite things about being on the board, but I've been overwhelmed by the commitment of the longer term board members to the well-being of IFFP and the passion that people bring to their board service. And I'm very proud to be part of that group. And this is my dog, Bella.
Thanks, Susan. John, do we have Natalie or Jared on the line?
I don't see Jared. Natalie is on, but her
Hi.
video's up. There you go.
Hey, Natalie.
Hi, just very quickly, I'm on an Amtrak train, so I'm really can't just like to say hi.
So there's
I
Natalie.
see you. There you go.
Turn over to you guys. We've been members since 2014 and very happy to help on the board. This is my 1st year.
It's dedication and action. That's Heidi just posted in the chat, Natalie, that shows dedication and action. Definitely true. I'll go, and then John, maybe you could close us out for the intros and then we can keep going. I'm Jill Fioravanti. As I mentioned, my husband Mark teaches 6th grade. He's also taught 2nd and 4th and maybe 5th. I taught as well a few years ago. This is my 2nd year on the board. And we have 3 daughters, Margot, who's 13, and COA with Josh, an 11-year-old, Elise, who's in 6th grade, and a 3rd grader, Penelope, who was on Sunday school earlier this morning with David's wife. We've been IFP members since 2016. And, I think in addition to what everyone has said, which I would ditto, I think what this board is not like a rubber stamp board. Like, this is a board that really, I think if you're on it, you feel like you're really contributing and you're not just showing up and kind of, having a meeting and then signing off and not hearing anything for a month. Like, this is really about like meaningful engagement. And I think at the end of the day, that's what civic leadership is. It's about being meaningfully engaged. And I really feel strongly that this board does that. And I'm really proud to be able to be a part of that. And John, why don't you close out our intros and then we can go into the priorities.
So first of all, not pictured is Jared McGrath, who is one of our newest board members, who is spectacular. I didn't see him on, but I did see Randy on. So Randy, thank you for loaning us Jared. I'm John Mills. I am the chair of the board this year. I have been with IFFP since 2012 with my lovely wife, Dr. Tara Coles, and our 4 children. Zoe, our oldest, went through COA a few years ago. twins, Phoebe and Noah, went through COA last year, and Noah is interning the COA prep class, and Phoebe is doing preschool, and youngest Lila is in 6th grade with one of David's kids and one of Jill's kids, and I think that's it as far as board member children. I also taught for a few years. I taught each of my kids in one of their grades, and I guess one of the reasons I bring that up is one of my favorite things about being on the board is also about being a teacher is I get to just meet more people. And the additional thing I'll add, like everybody else did, is that I'm not as eloquent as the rest of the board, and they were better at saying what they liked than I could. So I'm going to leave it at that. And it is truly my pleasure to be the chair of this board. And you know what? This is my 3rd year on the board. And each year has been just great. Every one of the people on the board has just been fantastic to work with and really dedicated to this community. So I'll leave it at that, and I will pass it over to Jill, and I'll just be doing all sorts of things in the background as well.
Good job, John. Okay, so I'm going to thank you for giving us a little time at the beginning to introduce ourselves, and we thought it would just be helpful to put a little more info to faces and names, so you had a sense of who was working for IFFP behind the scenes on the board of directors for this year. So we wanted to kind of lay out, and I'll do this very quickly, the 4 priority areas that the board has lifted up for this year. And you'll notice they do need to be more measurable. We're talking about making them, there's an acronym that you'll see a lot in kind of nonprofit organizations called SMART, where goals are specific, measurable, aggressive yet achievable, relevant, and time bound. That's the acronym SMART. So these are not yet there, but we are aiming to get them there over the next few weeks. And our hope would be that by this time next month, these will be, the board will spend some time with the staff looking at these in more detail, and we've already kind of divided up who's most interested in each of these, and we'll work to make them more SMART. So that way, as we move through the year, we're able to kind of hold ourselves as a community and as a board and staff more accountable to where we want to be going, and what we've laid out for ourselves to focus on. So I'm going to run through these about 1 minute per slide, and then I'm going to actually have to sign off video. I'll come back on audio, and John's going to take it over from there in terms of facilitating a discussion for everyone on the line who would like to contribute about your thoughts, reflections, what questions you have, what resonates or doesn't, for us to be thinking about as a board and working with the staff as we move forward. So first area for us for the year is around, and these aren't necessarily like more or less important, each of these focus areas is just, they're just numbered this way, is personnel and operations. So I tried in putting these slides together to lift up the things, particularly in the first couple of bullets, that were kind of most time sensitive, or that we had already started kind of working on, or plan to be working on sooner rather than later as we go through the year. So as you can see, developing protocols for COVID, we've unfortunately have had to jump into that, even before technically we began our time as a board, in really thinking about criteria, looking at when are we going back and under what conditions, and even the fact that I think all of us are sad that we even had to think about that at all. So, we're still in COVID, we're still dealing with that, and we're really trying to be balancing as a board, being safe, and also clearly hearing that like the sense of community can work online, but certainly works a lot better in person. So we're trying to kind of balance all those things out. You can see next up, we have an amazing interim Christian leader in Reverend Sam. We're so fortunate to have her. But her role right now is interim. That's what she was brought on to do. And so, thinking about what does a permanent Christian leader look like? What's our timeline and process for working through that permanent hire is going to be top of mind, I think, and coming up pretty quickly for the board to be thinking about. And then you can see the other things on here around sample text and scripts, having a really clear calendar and plan for the year. John's already started working on that, and I really appreciate what he's been doing. Having a library of documentation, which I think the staff is really excited about in particular, and then really thinking about the relationship between the board and the staff around decision making. And that's something that just personally, as someone who works in nonprofit leadership, is really important to me. Okay, go to the next slide. And we will come back to all these and open it up for discussion and questions. I just want to relay them before I have to go off video. Second area is the member experience. Want to give a big shout out to Jared and Miranda for already launching the teen group and programming for 20s and 30s. So those things have started, which is really exciting. We have, and David can certainly tell more about this either now or at some other point. We have like, I think over a dozen out of area families that we are so thrilled to have as a part of our membership and our community, and really making sure we're supporting them. And then you can look at some of these others, which are a mix of like, how do we do hybrid well? How do we have a better in-person experience? And then, you know, the finding ways for Reverend Sam and Rabbi Debbie to meet the community, as well as the last one, more ways for clergy interaction, specifically with the Sunday school, are things that we want to be working with the staff and particularly getting the staff's thoughts on how that can best be addressed. And we're starting to think about that even now already. All right, next slide is around financial sustainability. We are pretty much entirely funded through member dues. And I think one thing that we as a board are really looking at right now is, are there other revenue sources we can be tapping? Could we be applying for grants? We are a 501c3 nonprofit organization, so there are opportunities for us to access grants that we are really looking at the feasibility and starting to kind of try to advance that as a revenue stream, to be able to get some more money and to do all the things that we all want to do. And then on the flip side, I think it would be prudent and smart for us as a board, and we've been talking about this with the staff, and I think the board would agree, to really be looking at contingency planning. What happens if membership goes down? What happens if certain costs go way up, or anything in between? And that's just a healthy practice that I think we want to be trying to focus on as a board and as staff in the coming year. And then lastly, for fourth area is around outreach and marketing and member recruitment. And I think you can see how these really connect with one another. So for instance, if you have an effective 20s and 30s group, hopefully that would then also be supporting member recruitment. And that would then have a financial impact. So there's these four focus areas certainly are intertwined and interlinked, and really, if I was more graphically inclined, would be able to put them in some kind of visual to show how they're more connected. But our goal here, and these are goals we've had for, I think, multiple years, grow the membership. I think Rabbi Debbie in particular has been really helpful in helping us connect with other religious groups with her network, and that's been great. Miranda is really on top of thinking about marketing through Google and how we can be using our online presence more effectively. And I think we moved over to IFFP.org as opposed to IFFP.net. So even that can make a difference in terms of like visibility and being more effective and kind of a outreach around our outreach and our marketing. So those are the four areas that we've laid out. As I mentioned, we want to make these more smart. We want to make them specific, measurable, aggressive, yet achievable, relevant, and time-bound. And that's what we're going to be working on as a board and a staff over the next few weeks. But I'll stop there. I'll turn it over to John. I'm going to sign off and I'll sign back on audio. Just give me, John, about 5 minutes and I should be able to hop back on. And this is really from here on out time for all of you to be weighing in with your thoughts and feedback and questions for the board as we move forward. And John,
Thank you, Jill.
Thank
Yep.
you very
I'll be right back in a little bit.
Great. Back careful if you're driving or anything like that. All right. So hopefully we're back on gallery view. So yeah. So again, thank you, Jill, for that. In years past, at least last year, we also had, as part of this adult group, either part of or the whole presentation of David Beinhacker's incredible analysis of the membership survey results. We are going to give that its own adult group a little later in the year. So that's that. And now, honestly, I would just like to open it up to anybody who has any questions or has anything to feedback or input. And just logistically, just because you happen to be left of me on this, Heidi, could you do me a favor and just kind of keep an eye on the chat, because there's no way I'm going to be able to do that. So
Yes.
chat if you wish, or you can raise your hand, or you can just go off mute and start talking. Now it's up to you. Membership, please barrage us with questions and thoughts. There you go. Larry, please.
Larry, you're on mute.
Larry, I might have muted you by accident just there. So yeah, there you go.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yep.
Thanks first, Jill, for presenting a quick overview of a very ambitious agenda. Hats off to you all for undertaking such an agenda on our behalf. And I certainly understand you're not doing it on your own. But I wanted to ask about the search for a permanent Christian leader. It is a little awkward to have an interim leader who is also a candidate to be the permanent leader. And so I just wondered if you have, I'm sure you have talked with her about that, and could you just share with us a little bit about how that is going to unfold, just it would raise my comfort level. And I'll mute after that. Thank you.
I'm happy to address that, John, if you want, but I'll let you go first if you.
Sure. Thank you, Larry, for that's an excellent question. And yes, it is a little awkward. And we've had a few discussions about it. And we are still working on the fine details of the logistics about when we're going to start, when we need to start, and when we're going to start really meeting and thinking about how we're going to dive into the permanent Christian leader recruiting. And then I think Heidi's got more than that. So I will hand it over to you if you like.
Well, I certainly don't want to say anything that I shouldn't, but
Right.
I think I'm not good.
Likewise.
Yeah, right. Like, but I don't think that's going to happen. So when we first started thinking about an interim, the very early on, we thought, oh, well, we don't want the interim to be able to apply for the permanent, because that would give the interim an unfair advantage. But then the wisdom came about and bubbled, thankfully, that wait, what if we love the interim and we're not allowing the interim to apply for the permanent? That's also a problem. So so the interim is allowed to apply, and so it's not. It may seem awkward, but it's not. Sam knows that she's been hired to be the interim, and there is a difference in how an interim approaches their job versus how a permanent approaches their job. And she very much appreciates that she is dealing with a community in transition, and that is what she is here to do. But as you've already experienced with Sam, she has an enthusiasm and a passion that's like, she wants to do things and really be a part of the community, and maybe make some changes or suggest some changes without, forgive me for saying this, without pissing anyone off either, right? Like she wants to, she wants to test a little bit. So she understands that while she understands she's the interim, she kind of wants to push us a little bit too. That said, there have been a few members of the community who have said, hey, can we not do a search and keep Sam? So some people have just said that. So there's that out there as well, but I'm now going to stop talking. And Susan has her hand up.
Yeah, and I'll just add one thing to that that Heidi reminded me of. In a couple conversations we have had with Reverend Sam, she made it very clear, and we were clear with each other, that she is the interim Christian leader right now. She is not, having a year-long interview for the permanent gig. So she's treating this as an interim, and that's where she's doing some of the helping us through transition, and also giving us fresher ideas, not necessarily as the hopefully soon to be permanent, but as the interim, who just will happen to also probably be a candidate for permanent. So Susan Kaplan, please unmute.
Thank you for reminding me. At least I didn't say 3 minutes worth of stuff on mute. You guys need to correct me if I'm wrong about the timing, but just to be kind of practical about it, the board decided that we would give Sam the space to be the interim before we entered into discussions about how we were going to proceed for the year following this year. And my recollection, and this is where I may stand corrected, please, was that we at least were going to wait until December before we dove into how we were going to proceed past that. And that would give us and Samantha a space to fully and completely have an interim period of time. I think that's right. Will was shaking his head yes in terms of the timing. So I don't know if everybody else agrees.
Yeah, I don't think that's set in. Well, maybe it is set in stone, and I don't remember. But yeah, we will no later than December for sure. And Joanna, who by the way has volunteered to be part of the COVID prevention task force, and thank you for that, Joanna. And also for this.
Yes, I was just wondering why we, if it's part of the bylaws or something, that we need to have an interim and then a formal search for a permanent one, or whether we can just come up with if the plan was to come up with a formal procedure to just be able to transition directly from an interim to a permanent, provided the community or whatever, according to whatever criteria are decided upon. I realize that we've had issues with previous hires that were maybe not ideal for the community. And then, obviously that creates a whole new set of issues, but provided that there's a certain level of acceptance by the community. I mean, Reverend Sam is really fantastic. Anyway, but if there's a way to transition, or if just trying to ask whether a procedure can be formalized to transition directly, provided that certain criteria are met, I guess. Sorry for.
No. Excellent question. Anybody?
Yeah, John, I can field this. So, particularly, and it was when you asked kind of about bylaws and formal process, and this is actually an area where how we go through the process is flexible in terms of really at the board's discretion. So it is something where we do try to kind of look at the big picture, the overall circumstances, and listen to the community. At the time that Reverend Julia announced that she was going to retire, we were in the process, I think we were in the process or had just brought on Rabbi Debbie and completed a rather intensive hiring process for the rabbi. And then we were also kind of, I think, still relatively early dealing with COVID and kind of the what that put over our community. and we also realized the significance of losing someone of Rabbi Julia's significance. And that was where, as we were presented with it, the idea of, in her final year, trying to transition to an interim appeared to make the most sense for IFFP. And it was really in regard to the circumstances we were facing. And again, I think, Susan mentioned that our immediate decision was that we are not going to really take any affirmative steps before December. And that's kind of where we are now. But in terms of what we do next, our bylaws and formal process give us the flexibility to, at that point, do what's in the best interest of IFFP with community input.
Thank you, David. And Jill Bernstein, you're up next. Please unmute yourself. Oh, you're on top of it, of course.
I'm just wondering if there are candidates maybe left over from the search for the interim process, or people that have come forward to IFFP in the meantime who are really interested, that the board is aware of, that really would like to be part of the search process for the permanent position. And I guess I ask that because in thinking about, how extensive of a process to have for the board to undertake for looking for a permanent, I'm wondering, are there people who really want to be part of this search and be considered, and would feel they'd been unfairly kind of left out if they weren't included? Or are there people in the community who really feel like there should be a search process that goes beyond Reverend Sam? And I almost feel like if the answer to both of those is no, then, especially if there's nothing formalized in the bylaws that says we need to do this, extensive formal search, maybe we don't have to, right? And it wouldn't be unfairly, leaving anybody out or kind of disenfranchising anyone by not going through this extensive process. And I don't know if the board can assess that or knows that already.
Thank you for making that point.
Heidi, did you want to?
Yeah, no, that's those. Thank you for making that point and introducing those thoughts into the board's conversation.
Yeah, and generally speaking, that's some of what we're going to assess in November, December, is like, how does the community feeling about things, and have we gotten any input from anybody else who's really looking to be the permanent? Yeah, and that's one of the decisions we're going to make, is like, if both of those answers end up being no, then maybe, yeah. I'm just restating what you said, Jill. So yes. And Suzanne Isaacs has her hand up.
It's very strange not being part of the board on this side for this meeting. It's been a lot of years that I was part of it. But I think, as someone who was on the board and who led the search last year, we were very careful to know that we were charged to find an interim, and we were doing that without the community's input. And so it was only the board making the decision. So that's why Reverend Sam is our interim. And we didn't jump to another position, but we wanted to make sure that with our choice of her, whether or not she decides, and I dearly, dearly hope she wants to stay with us as much as we want her to stay with us, that then the community should be part of that decision as well. And so that's certainly why it's an interim position right now. And slightly off topic, but while I'm still on the microphone, I want to thank you for making the hard decisions about COVID. I know those decisions are really hard and hard conversations. We know you'll make the right ones, and thank you for having to make the hard ones.
Thank you, Suzanne. And I see Will has his hand raised, but before I even go to you, I just want to welcome Jared McGrath, our other board member, just real quick, just to let you know he's there. And Will.
Wait, before Will talks, Karen didn't have her hand up, but she had like waved.
I was like waving.
Thank you.
So my question is, for the new Christian leader. So I remember, so Julia's title was actually spiritual leader, which sort of connotated a little bit more than Christian leader. And are we looking for a new Christian leader, or are we looking for a spiritual leader? I guess the question is like, are we going, and that may also sort of impact like whether or not we need to do a search or not in the decision too. So are we looking for somebody to fill the same role as Julia, or are we seeing us shift?
Extraordinarily good question, Karen.
Yeah, and I think, and this is Will, and I think that's something we'll have to, I think it's a good time as while we have this interim as a chance to figure out how to answer that question, right? We get this gift in this time of having this interim for us as a community to decide, do we need a spiritual leader or do we need just a Christian leader? And I think that's something as we go through this time period, we'll be able to better assess and answer that question. So I'm not trying to not answer your question, but I do think that we have this time, it's critical for us to figure that out as a community and us as members of the board to make sure that, you know, when we're going through this process sort of behind the scenes and when we're figuring out how to do a job description, that we make sure we apply some of that based on, you know, obviously feedback and, you know, what the community wants to do and make sure we incorporate that. But that's a very excellent question because there's two distinguishing things there, whether it's just a Christian leader or just a spiritual leader.
Yeah, and I would just like to add that it's not just the difference in the titles, that this year, the Reverend Sam and Rabbi Debbie have have an equal number of hours per week. And that IFFP historically has never come into a year with that. I believe when I came on as a member, it was, I think Reverend Julia was over 20 hours a week and Rabbi Rain was 12 hours a week. But this year they're equal. And that is, again, like Will said, something that doesn't lock us into those being equal in the future, but it is a chance for the community to see, you know, how do we like this? How does it work? Where our two clergy are at the same level and at the same hours.
Thank you, Larry, for getting that going.
Yes. It is right off the top with a good one. Any other questions or comments, or anybody raise their hand that I didn't realize about the search for a permanent Christian leader?
John, there's a question on the chat.
In the chat, yeah. Jen Liebrick is in the car, so she can't do video. What are membership numbers looking like? I ask because my son's class is a fraction the size of what it was last year. Yep. And if numbers are low, I encourage the board to prioritize member recruitment as your #1 objective this year. Yes. Thank you, Jen. Does anybody on the board want to speak to that? Susan or David, you guys, Susan, and then David. And Susan, you're on mute.
Yeah. Let me just speak briefly about it, and maybe I think Jared also has a piece of this, because it's important to recognize that Jared, as the son of IFFP members, he's the second generation, is very heavily involved, and Miranda gets credit also for this, in making inroads into communities where there are young interfaith couples, perhaps without children, and also trying to cement the teen group in a way that leads perhaps to a commitment like what Jared is making to IFFP. So I think that the membership issue is something that we cope with, that we deal with, that we talk about very frequently, as I'm sure David is going to talk about from his position as treasurer.
Thank you, Susan. And the board members hear this too much. Almost every time I speak, I start with the point of the most critical aspect to the IFFP long-term budget, and not just financially, but in terms of volunteers and everything. We have our membership, at least our in-person membership, has decreased quite a bit the last few years. Part of that, there's always been, or for the last 9 years, there was this issue of these incredibly large Sunday school classes, the largest we've ever had, and those were our COA classes the last couple years. And so we actually see the decrease most in Sunday school, but our membership is down, and I thank you for kind of raising the alarm on this, because it is the most critical thing, and it is something that every member of IFFP, including virtual members, can help us work with in terms of getting the word out, making sure that people know about us, know what we do, and just encouraging people to visit us, because until you see one of our gatherings, you really kind of don't know what it includes. Like Susan alluded to, I want to applaud. I mean, it was a huge win for us getting Jared as a new and as a young member of the board. And he came in instantly, came in on day one with, hey, let's get Teen Group and try to keep families engaged after their kids graduate from COA. And then a few weeks later comes with, hey, we're hearing from these 20s and 30s who don't feel like there's anything in IFFP for them. Let's make a 20s, 30s group and really bring them in. And when you combine that with our efforts to bring in the virtual members and the distant Sunday school, there are, I think, some big and bold ideas on growth right now. And I will also say, last year, we didn't see it. We saw kind of a stagnation with the pandemic. We didn't get many new members. This year, we have 13 new online members or virtual members, but we also have 4 new in-person members. And so we're seeing some progress, but this is something where everyone can help. Yeah, and so thank you.
Thank you, David. Sorry, something just happened with my screen. Thank you, David. Anything else on that? And I do have one point to make, actually following up from Larry's question and Jen's question. Larry mentioned that it was an ambitious agenda, and Jen mentioned top priority should be growing membership. Just wanted to let everyone know that the board is not planning to try to accomplish every one of those items. And Jill may have mentioned this, and I was just too busy doing the background, but we're not planning on trying to accomplish all of the 36 things on that list. We do know we need to focus. So I just wanted to let people know that we are not trying to spread ourselves too thin by trying to do everything.
Hey, John, can I jump in just for a second?
Please.
And I've been listening. I actually am driving, so I've been listening, but so I hadn't said something sooner. But I just want to echo what John said. Like, well, 2 things. One is it is very ambitious and unlikely that we can make substantial movement on all of those things. And I think the other thing I would note is it's not just the board that's working on those things, it's also the staff. So we as a board need to be, and this is what we are doing in the next few weeks, we're going to be regrouping with ourselves and with the staff to really say, all right, like, what's most important? How are we going to really know that we succeeded and what's most important? And then how can we not lose sight of some of the other things that perhaps don't make it to the top lines, but that that are things that need to be addressed at some point. So I appreciate the sentiment that it might be too much, and I think, you know, having the prioritization between the board and the staff is going to be, you know, one of the next steps. And the other thing I would just note is I really want to thank everyone who's raised questions and given comments. It's such a rich conversation, and it just makes me remember why I love IFFP so much, because people not only care but also voice what's on their minds in a way that's really productive and constructive and supportive. So I just wanted to thank everyone who's raised questions for that.
Thank you, Jill. And I'll add one upcoming thing. Yes, thank you all for your input. And one of the infrastructure type things that we're trying to do is we're trying to clean up our email addresses, basically. And one of the ideas that we're trying to accomplish is to have a single email address, thinking something along the lines of board@iffp.org, where people can just send your input. You know, if you're not necessarily comfortable bringing it up in a situation like this, just sort of an open forum for suggestions, questions, what have you. More to come on that very soon. And that's it. Anything else, anyone? Thanks all, and thanks for sticking around, folks.
John, I was just going to ask Larry, did we answer your question, by the way, in terms of your original question? I know there was some kind of other offsets of that question, but just wanted to make sure we got your question answered.
I'm satisfied with the discussion. I realized that there's no final answer at this point. I thought it was an important, really important issue for the community, obviously. And so I thought I'd just put it out there. So I'm happy with it for now.
Okay. Yeah, and I would say to encourage everyone, right? If you know, we're trying to figure out a way to get to that email or whatever, but you know, feel free to reach out to any of the board members if you have questions, obviously, as a way to get some insights as to basically how the sausage is made, to use that term. But I encourage everyone to do that. I'm sorry, John.
Not at all. No, thank you. And I'll add this to it. And it's a little early for this, but if you're really interested in how the sausage is made, you can be a board member too. Just let us know sometime along the lines, along the year, and we'll welcome you with open arms. And yeah, I did see the from Katie and Ben, the social media presence. That is something we're trying to focus on as well. And Miranda has been running the show for the most part and doing a fantastic job. And if you have any specific ideas, please let us know.
Yeah. One small point there. One thing that everyone can do to really help us get the word out is if you're on social media, follow IFFP and then share content. You can reach people who aren't following IFFP and really help us spread the word. And that's something that anyone with a digital presence can really help us with. And looking at what's happened with virtual membership and the connection of Facebook, I can tell you that that digital presence and getting the word out does make a difference.
Can we put in the newsletter this week what our social media pages are? Because I have not found them. And that's part of why I was recommending making a stronger presence.
Yes, and we will. Thank you. Yeah, and that's just as a general statement, that's one thing that we've been trying to solve, a more general idea. That's something we've been trying to solve for a while is most new members that have spoken to me or anybody who about how they came to IFFP, more often than not, the story is, yeah, I didn't know you guys existed and I just stumbled upon it, whatever. So trying to fix that would be fantastic. So the fact that you weren't sure where our social media pages were, that's one thing we'll fix.
Yeah, I kept Googling and I mean, the only way we found out about it was the By the Book, the
Katzmiller book.
The Susan Katzmiller book, which going to a print source is kind of far for many 20s and 30s. So a stronger Instagram or Facebook presence would be great.
Very 20th century of us.
Well, there are some of us on the board who are a little older, and so it is helpful to have that perspective. Hence, ergo, Jared.
I'll let everyone know when I can get Rabbi and Reverend to agree to make TikTok videos every day. We're working towards it.
I'll just throw this out there. When we were going over the slides, thank you, Jill, for creating those slides, by the way. The two that I thought would garner the most discussion were marketing, which we've hit, and also membership experience. Yeah, any new fresh ideas on those, or format of adult groups or anything like that? If anybody has any questions or any thoughts or ideas going forward, that would be much appreciated as well. And that's one of the things that we're trying to take as an opportunity with this transition year, is to maybe try out some new things without trying too many new things. Susan.
I just want to, you said adult group, which spurred a thought of mine, which is that Rabbi Debbie and Reverend Sam have put forward an agenda, a framework for the adult groups that they will lead this year. And I think it's worth everybody taking a look at it and giving us feedback on it. I think it's a great idea. But any meat on those bones that people want to put would be very helpful. And also any other ideas for adult group that we can revitalize it in other ways other than what Samantha and Debbie are doing.
Yes, and that was in the bulletin as well. We're looking for feedback for adult groups specifically, so chime up is necessary. And Katie and Ben, your hand is up, I think.
Yeah, actually, one of the things that I saw in the goals that might really help with membership is connecting to local religious communities as well. I think referral patterns and word of mouth are going to be one of the most important ways for people to reach IFFP. And if local leaders and other religious communities are dealing with interfaith couples and want to help refer them to a community where they'll have that support, I think that would be really helpful.
Can you, that's a great idea. Can you expand on that? Because I'm interested.
Yeah, I think just connecting with local synagogues and churches and other religious communities and doing more social events or other celebrations and things like that. Just having that network where if somebody is involved in an interfaith relationship or is curious about an interfaith community, knowing that we exist, having human interaction where they can put faces on it and see that we're normal people and have normal spiritual lives, like that. I think that goes a long way. Just knowing that we exist and having that human connection in the local area, I think is useful.
Ben said to me that it would have been really cool if when we were getting married, if his rabbi had known about IFFP and could say, oh, I don't personally handle interfaith families, but I actually know about a community that's 45 minutes away that might be able to address your questions. So something like that.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. And that is something that Rabbi Debbie personally has been wanting to focus on this upcoming year. So that's going to be great, I think. All right, let me see. Let me make sure. All right, it's 11:52.
Stan.
Stan.
Yeah, hi. Really good discussion. Really appreciate everybody's thoughtful work. And one question I had was, has there been any discussion given to the possibility of having any outdoor in-person events in this year?
Yes. Yeah, that has been a topic of discussion, many discussions, many discussions. And yes, there are already some outdoor events going on for some of the classes, COA Prep and COA. That's not new, but they're doing their ropes course and other outdoor activities. And yeah, we are looking into figuring out how to do outside versions of maybe gathering or Sunday school. Don't quote me on that because we're not sure if it's possible, but also trying to think of other, just outside of gathering or Sunday school, other ways to get folks together in smaller groups or outside, just to get people seeing each other's faces. Don't have it. Yeah,
I have a thought. It's possible. I don't know if people are interested, but like weather permitting, and I'm looking at the weather next Saturday, October 2nd in the evening, like maybe we could do a park for a Havdalah picnic. I don't know. And like, I don't know if that's of interest to people, but just throwing that out there.
Thank you, Heidi. And Stan, is that answering the question that you're asking, or?
Well, yeah, I guess I was wondering about, and I'm thinking about how people are, what we're all doing now that there's COVID, and a lot of people are seeming to do things outside. And I was just by St. Anne's Catholic Church, which is in our neighborhood, and they were having this huge fair, and I couldn't figure out if they had an outdoor service. I couldn't figure it out. Of course, it's a different situation. They have a big space, and I don't know. I just wondered, the idea of having. I think after a year of COVID fatigue, and now we're going into the second year, I think it's really hard to keep people sticky into our group with just online presence, and maybe it's not even possible, but it seems like if there was some sort of, and I don't know the Charles E. Smith Day School where we were, if they have like an outdoor tent or anything like that. A lot of schools have put those up, and if we could like even occasionally, like even once a month, have a gathering that's in person, it would just sort of maybe cement the community together. Just something I was thinking.
Yeah, I certainly don't think you're alone along those lines thinking that. That is in the mix of what we're trying to do. I'll just say this. I don't think I'm speaking out of turn for the board. We do not want to have a full online year this year. That is the furthest from our hope. So yeah, we're looking at all sorts of ways.
You're here, John. I will agree.
Yeah. We're also members, and we're as Zoom fatigued as everybody else, I would imagine. So yes, thank you, Stan, for the specifics, and any other specifics, that'd be great. But yeah, we're talking to Charles E. Smith Day School, to see if there's any possibility of us doing any outdoor activities there. Yeah, and if anybody has any other ideas of outdoor somethings outside of that, please let folks know. And hopefully does that hit your question at least mostly, Stan?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Great. Joanna.
Yeah, real quick, sorry to interrupt. If I could just add on to that. Hi, Stan. I just was going to add that the gathering is obviously a bigger group, so all these other considerations are in play, echoing everything that John and the rest of the board have said so far. Some of the smaller focus areas, the ones I'm involved with, the young adults and certainly the teens, we have already gathered this year outside, and we will continue to do so. Just because we have a smaller group, a vaccine age group, everybody's able to be responsible for themselves. So I just want to pass on, if Maya would like to join the teens. Love to see her. We'll do outside gatherings as long as the weather holds up. And we'll go from there when it gets colder.
Right.
Yeah, I was just going to add to that as well in terms of smaller groups. I don't know if Randy wants to jump in as part of the environmental working group, but we were thinking of the plan was, at least what we've discussed, is to maybe have a once a month kind of activity outdoors for whoever wants to join. But more will come on that.
Thank you. As I was alluding to a second ago, I'm not sure if anyone on here needs to corral any children in Sunday school. It's 11:58. Just mentioning that. I'm not going anywhere, so we can stay on here as long as we want. Susan, I think you
just to add on to what Jonna just said, and I don't think I'm speaking out of turn. If I am, somebody on the board needs to hammer me down. Rabbi Debbie said that she walks every Friday morning somewhere or another, maybe Cabin John, and that she would love to have people join her. So Joanna, maybe you or Randy wants to connect with her and see if there can be some coordination there.
Yeah, I guess maybe Randy will do it. I'm just wondering about the difficulty in terms of logistics on a Friday morning kind of thing when people have kids in school and people have usually, for the most part, they have regular jobs.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah, maybe something for Randy to touch base on with the rabbi.
Yeah, this is Jill, we're starting to put together a list with Reverend Sab and Rabbi Debbie about some different options for full group or larger group or smaller group outdoor events, plus what John's talking about, which would be something, the possibilities of doing things outdoors at the Charles E. Smith. So I think this is all what we're trying to kind of sort through, a menu of options that can at least get us temporarily through the virtual time frame, however long that goes till.
Thank you. And I'm not sure if this is the right place to mention this, but I'll mention it. Again, we are looking to not be completely online for the full year. And when we do, God willing, the creek don't rise, are back in person, it is planned to be a hybrid service. So anybody who might be on here who is a virtual member, we are certainly not forgetting you, and we will be at least live streaming. We're still trying to figure out the specifics of the technology we're going to use, but yes, we're planning for our services to be in person and also streamed.
Hey, John, this is Sandy, and I know everyone's got to go. And, we just want to thank, as everyone has, the board for guiding IFFP during this most challenging of times. I would just recommend, and you guys have communicated well, that the hope is that we won't just be, virtual the whole year. But I think to kind of Stan's question and the degree to which other options are being pursued, it may help the board if kind of communicate that a little more clearly. Just speaking for our family, if our son wasn't in COA, we probably would not have come back, because the essence of IFFP is that
For us.
is that in person, right? That's the strength and the energy and all the positive that we get. And I think these small groups are awesome. And Jared and others that are organizing it, huge kudos. But I think just trying to be a little bit more clear that there are kind of in-between options that are being considered. I hope some of them materialize, but even if they don't, you may just be helpful. Because, right now there's no criteria established. I know that's on the list for what will trigger in person. So it's very difficult to get a sense that that's actually going to happen soon, right? I think there's a feeling that until the youngsters get vaccinated, and that could be a while. So maybe just communicating that some of these in between options, because when we walk by our local church or local synagogue and they're all gathering, it makes IFFP stick out more as to what we're missing. And again, I'm not blaming the board for its decisions at all. I wouldn't want to be in your shoes. But maybe just finding a way to communicate more strongly that these in-between options are really being pursued could be helpful.
Thank you. I could not agree more. And you know, communicating as many details as possible, even the criteria. I don't think I'm speaking out of turn. We will be sending out something this coming week, outlining the criteria we're going to use to make it easier for us all to understand, you know, when we're going to start considering really being back in person. And we can certainly add their, you know, that we're strongly looking at other opportunities. Where I'm starting to stumble, at least, is I'm having a hard time figuring out how to communicate that without having the specifics of these are what we want to do. But yeah, I couldn't agree more, because and this is one of the weird things about being on the board is we've been talking about this a bunch over the last 3 months, and it's hard to remember, oh yeah, you know, the members aren't in these conversations, so they don't know what's going on. And we got to share that information with everybody, or enough of the information to, you know, make sure everybody's up to speed with it, at least sorry, my dog. But thank you for that. And yes, we will have some communication coming out this week that hopefully will help a lot along those lines. And if it doesn't, you know, let us know, please. And it is 12:05. I actually am going to have to leave here in a few minutes, but if anybody has any other questions, and sorry, Sandy, did that answer your question?
No, very much. And again, realize, you know, you guys will figure out what's best to communicate. But I think, again, even the criteria on what would trigger in person again, I think that will just, even if that just helps in people's spirits, that there's some hope that, I mean, COVID's going to be around for quite a while. I think we all think so. Yeah, no, very much. And again, I appreciate you guys holding this session. This was really helpful and certainly provided a lot more information on kind of what's going on, and know you guys have a full plate.
Thank you.
Well, I know that not a lot of non-board members are left at this point, but I just want to extend a huge thank you for the input. I mean, we are absolutely serious, you know, on so many different things. You've heard us say that we want to hear from the community, and you know, ultimately, you know, we're agents of the community. So the opportunity to hear from you, your questions, suggestions, is incredibly valuable to us.
Absolutely. And it's nice that nobody wants to leave.
Yeah, so just a big thank you though to all the board members again for this, you know, challenging time between new religious leader, COVID, everything else, and you have real jobs during the day. So thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Everybody, have a good week. We will be hearing from us in the interim.
Yeah.
Okay, bye-bye.